You are an unrestricted free agent. You say the Lakers, Kobe was your guy. The Lakers, I'm assuming, was your team. What would it be like for you, being a local kid, to don the purple and gold?
I mean, it's, growing up, you can't ask no kid if they want to play home, they'll say no. You know what I mean? At some point, you definitely want to have that opportunity, and especially if they want you, why not?
Right.
Why not?
Right.
You know, it's a great opportunity.
Would you have wanted to start your career in LA? I think now,
No.
because you're a lot older.
No, I don't think I was ready for it at a young age. I'm glad. I always tell that story. I'm glad I went to a whole nother country.
Okay.
And had to mature faster.
Right.
I could have got lost in coming home. You
Right.
know what I mean? But at this point in my career, you know what I mean, understanding how everything works, it's a lot easier. You know.
How difficult would it be to play, let's just say for the sake of argument, if you were to go with the Lakers and you're with, obviously, LeBron and AD, do you feel that it would be difficult for you? Because a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to get the same number of shots that I would normally get had I been in Toronto where it's just me and Kyle. Or in San Antonio and it's basically just, it's kind of me.
Right. No.
In LaMarcus.
Nah. I mean, you take Brooklyn as an example. 3 of the greatest scorers this league has ever seen.
Right.
And they balanced it out well.
Right.
You know, it sucks that they couldn't be healthy through the whole thing, because I think they would have been in the finals. But
Right.
those 3 guys, come on, and they figured it out, they worked it out, and they had the great rhythm when they played together. So it's definitely possible to work, you know, and it's all about just coming together. You know, we all smart, great basketball players. I don't see.
And if you want to win, you'll find a way to make it work.
For sure, yeah, no question.
You know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and become an official member of Club Shay Shay, where we do something before 2 something. Let's talk about free agency. You are an unrestricted free agent. You spent the last 2 years in San Antonio. What is DeMar DeRozan looking for if he were to leave Seattle in San Antonio, if he leaves for a new home? What are you looking for?
I mean, it's all about winning at
Right.
this point. You know what I mean? Going into my 13th season.
Right.
You're seeing all these guys just competing for a championship.
I hear a lot of guys say that. I've heard a lot of guys in baseball and basketball and football say it's all about winning, but they normally end up going to the team that pays them the most money. Is it all about winning? Or, you know, you want to get compensated too while winning?
I mean, you try to meet the fine line.
You try to balance it
You
out.
try to balance it as best as you can.
Right.
But at this point, you know, you gotta weigh out the opportunity of winning a championship
Right.
kind of more. You
Right.
know, especially with the career I had, I've been fortunate to make a lot of money.
Good money. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at this point, you know, your ultimate goal is always to compete for a championship.
You know what to do. Hit the subscribe button and become an official member of Club Shay Shay, where we do something before 2 something.
Because he's an unrestricted free agent. And look, free agency starts in a week. DeRozan spoke to Shannon Sharpe on the Club Shay Shay podcast about what his priorities are. Here is what he said.
At this point, you know, you gotta weigh out the opportunity of winning a championship
Right.
kind of more. You
Right.
know, especially with the career I had, I've been fortunate to make a lot of
good
money.
money. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at this point, you know, your ultimate goal is always to compete for a championship.
First of all, shouts to the Club Shay Shay set designer, because that's a very nice setup there. But Bobby, more importantly, what are your expectations for DeMar DeRozan in free agency?
Yeah, it's funny, Rachel. He is the one player that's kind of flown under the radar as far as we've heard, certainly Chris Paul's name and Kawhi Leonard. But DeMar DeRozan has flown under the radar. And I think there's 2 schools of thoughts as far as with him. It's the teams that have cap space that are playoff teams. So now you're looking at a team like New York, potentially Miami. But if you go to New York, is that a win now situation with RJ Barrett and Julius Randle? And can you maybe get another player to come with you? And I think the most logical situation is going to be trying to work out some type of sign and trade. The last 2 years, there's been 16 players sign and trade. I would circle the Lakers as a possible destination just because it fits. It fits as far as DeRozan wanting to go back home and playing for a championship level team. I think it fits because if you're San Antonio, can you recoup maybe a Kyle Kuzma back as far as instead of losing DeRozan for nothing? And it's just a matter of if you're the Lakers, as far as we've always talked about that hard cap, right? They'd be hard capped at $143 million, and then you got to kind of put your other free agents kind of in a pecking order here. But the Lakers, for me, is probably the most logical destination for DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, add the Clippers to that, which is kind of interesting. I talked to someone close to DeMar today, and they said, look, San Antonio is still on the board, so don't count the Spurs out. But there's a lot of teams showing interest in DeMar. Lakers, Clippers, Knicks, Chicago. LA is certainly attractive. I went with him to his basketball camp in Compton. He does a lot back home. His father, God rest his soul, passed earlier this year, and his mom is still in Los Angeles. So going back to LA certainly is attractive for family reasons, to get back home, to be close to his family, and perhaps even do more in the community than he already has. But, so it ain't just the Lakers. The Clippers have some interest too.
Well, that is interesting. Remember, not so much this past season, but especially in the 2019-2020 season, we saw the Lakers and Clippers compete for a lot of players and, in fact, make a trade with each other. So that's always a little bit spicy. And certainly, DeMar has been so open about some of the struggles he has gone through, that his family has gone through. I think a lot of people would be rooting for him to go with.
He was making a lot of money, and the Lakers could offer him the $9.5 million. Something tells me when he talks about getting a haircut, he's talking about a sign and trade, not necessarily signing for $9.5 million a year. You never get what you deserve in business, only what you have the leverage to negotiate. And what this sounds like here is a seasoned veteran, perennial 20-plus point scorer, understands if he's going to be on a contender, he's not going to make the kind of bread that he made in San Antonio. In theory, the thing that broke he and Kyle Lowry up from Toronto is they both needed to get their money. And so since he went to San Antonio and got his bread, Kyle Lowry stayed in Toronto and got his bread. Those are going to be two of the 500 players that the national media put on the Lakers this offseason.
We're running out of Photoshop. We have so many players for the Lakers so far. Lowry, DeRozan, Westbrook, Beal,
CP3.
Yeah, CP3, Dame. We have so many players on the Lakers. They're going to have a 25-man roster and a $4 million cap, $400 million cap. Exactly. Oh, I forgot Buddy Hield. He's also on the Lakers next year.
Lakers, who have a big decision to make with Dennis Schroeder, turned down a big money extension. They don't really have an easy way to replace him, despite the fact that he had a slightly disappointing season. What could we see from Tinseltown?
Well, as you said, Schroeder turned down that 4-year, $84 million extension, which was the most the Lakers could offer him during the season, knowing that there was more out for him in free agency. And you have teams like Chicago and New York with cap space, New Orleans trying to create the cap space to go get a big point guard, perhaps Dallas in that mix. But listen, I think people have to look back at this postseason with Dennis Schroeder. And remember, he had COVID late in the year and was out for 10 days and not in the gym and sick, and then showed up and played in the playoffs. The performance wasn't there, but we saw plenty of other players in the league who went through that at different points in the year. They traded for him from Oklahoma City a year ago with the idea that they would re-sign him. And as you said, they cannot replace him if he leaves. They have literally offered Kyle Kuzma and KCP to almost every team I've talked to in the league has been offered some combination of Kuz and KCP, sometimes both of them, one of them, and that's not going to get them back a point guard of Dennis's stature. And so I think, listen, he's got options again, Chicago, New York. I still think in the end, there's a deal to be made for him to stay with the Lakers because all of a sudden now you're talking about, could we go get Ricky Rubio, like some good players, but I still think Schroeder is a player who moves the needle, and let's get him out of a COVID season, get him back with a training camp with this team, and it's probably going to look a lot different.
They need another playmaker to take some of the load from LeBron. That was the idea. They badly need that playmaker to be able to shoot better than Dennis Schroeder can shoot and shot last year. finding that player is going to be very difficult for them. You could start making up double sign-in trades with Schroeder for another free agent point guard. Those are very complicated deals. There is another point guard who can shoot really well, but is probably out of the Lakers' price range, and that's Chris Paul, who has a 40-something million
44
player option with the Phoenix Suns. Just made the finals with them, wants to be near his family on the West Coast. Phoenix checked that box. Where do we stand with CP3 in free agency?
That is a fascinating question in this offseason, because remember, it's not just Chris Paul, but they've got Cameron Payne they have to pay to keep. They have extension eligible DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges. DeAndre Ayton is going to want a max contract, and he's going to get it next year in restricted free agency if you don't give it to him now. Mikal Bridges might be a $20 million a year player. Now you can.
I don't think there's a might be there. I think he's going to get paid a lot of money.
Absolutely. Now you can push those guys off a year and deal with restricted free agency. But Chris, this is a test for Robert Sarver and his willingness to spend. It is not inconceivable that Chris Paul opts out of that contract and comes into this free agent market, and then all of a sudden the Suns are competing with everybody else and other options, and he has a lot more options in free agency right now than he had trade options coming out of OKC last year, even at 36 years old.
Well, that would be a huge story. And like you said, they have a year window left where Bridges and Ayton are on their rookie